Hello. Welcome to We Won't Watch, a YouTube channel that I have made for my girlfriend to talk about movies we won't watch together. Maybe they're bad, maybe they're boring, whatever the case, I just don't feel the need to subject her to them, but I still want a place to talk about them. So here we are, on YouTube. A couple of quick prefaces. Firstly, this channel is only for her. So if you're here and you're not my girlfriend, then, sorry? You can stay. You don't have to go. Thank you for being here. Just wanted to let you know. If you're here and you are my girlfriend, I love you. The second thing that I wanted to say was, this is my first time ever making a video, so I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do lights, or how my camera works, or how my microphone works, or how to write a script, or edit, or be on camera. I think I summed it up when I said I don't know anything. You're just going to have to deal with that. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. Oh well. Extra preface, it's really, really hot in my room right now, and I turned off all the fans so that you can't just hear fan noises the whole time. So it's entirely possible that halfway through I just get noticeably really sweaty. Fair warning. Anyways, all that being said, my name's Bex, and let's get into today's movie. In this video, we're going to be talking about Man of Steel, which was a Superman film that came out in 2013. For over a decade, it was the most recent Superman adaptation on the big screen. Until this movie, in 2025, James Gunn's Superman. I love this movie, by the way. I've seen it 3 times in theaters. I will watch it again when it comes out on streaming. Man of Steel, on the other hand, isn't good. I don't like it. It was hard to watch again for this review. Sorry that I'm subjecting you to it. Hopefully this whole YouTube video lens makes it a little less unenjoyable. As I said, this movie came out in 2013, which was a year after the first Avengers movie had come out. Now, Marvel and DC have always been rivals. It makes sense. They both have huge rosters of superheroes, of supervillains. They were comic companies, and then they made movies and TV shows and games. But DC was lagging a bit behind. Marvel had the MCU. They had established all these characters and they brought them together. And DC had nothing in cinemas. So they tried to make their own cinematic universe, the DC Extended Universe, or the DCEU. And they started with Man of Steel. This movie was directed by Zack Snyder, which immediately is an odd choice. He really has only ever done dark, gritty movies, which Superman is neither of those things. Occasionally he is, but if you're trying to base an entire cinematic universe around Superman, you don't want to go off of occasionally. Anyways, it was a bad choice. We'll talk about all of the negative consequences that came with Zack Snyder's directing in a little bit. But for now, let's jump straight into the movie. The first 20 minutes of this movie take place on Krypton, Superman's home planet. And it's less of a superhero movie and more of a space drama. We don't follow Superman, we follow his parents, his birth parents. His father, Jor-El, and his significantly less important mother, Lara Lor-Van. Jor-El is one of the head scientists of Krypton, and he's discovered that through overconsumption of natural resources, Krypton is fucked. The planet's going to be destroyed. And it's all their fault, basically. It's too late. They can't stop it. He and Lara decide They're going to send off their newly born son, Kal-El, to a distant planet in order to save him. We also meet during this time General Zod, who is the military leader of Krypton, and he has come to the same conclusion as Jor-El, but he has a plan. He's going to kill people, and then hopefully, with less people, there's less consumption, and he'll have saved the planet and what's left of the Kryptonians on the planet. Pretty much everyone disagrees with this plan except for a few of Zod's loyalists. Zod is very important later on. He's the main villain. A lot of stuff happens. There's a couple of pieces of information that are important later but are just really confusing right now because they don't explain it until later. And I think I will do the same thing. I'll just sort of say what happened and then leave the explanations till later because I feel like it's more equivalent to what it's like to actually watch the movie. So here we go. Kal-El is the first natural birth on Krypton in centuries. Jor-El goes to this weird lake on the back of this weird flying alien, and he takes a glowing skull thing from underwater called the Codex. They destroy the Codex, and they put that into Kal-El's DNA, and then they give Kal-El a key with a little S symbol, which is the symbol, the sort of house crest of the El family, but is also, the Superman logo. Little baby boy child Kal-El, they call him boy child.
A boy child.
The rest was mine, except for Kal-El. That's his name. Little baby was my addition. Little baby boy child Kal-El is sent off in an escape pod far away from Krypton, and immediately after that, Zod comes in and he kills Jor-El. He's then arrested, and Zod and his goons are put in goo cocoons and sent up to a black hole prison called the Phantom Zone. Krypton is then utterly decimated, and we see Kal-El arrive on Earth on a farm, and he's found by some farmers. That's the end of the Krypton section, sort of the prologue of the movie. I really like this section. I think that this is arguably the high point of the film. It doesn't feel like a superhero movie, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to be a superhero movie. Like, it doesn't need to be. It is a space drama, and it does space drama really well. Everything feels really alien, which is something that I appreciate. Usually Kryptonians and Krypton architecture is just like human but white and clean. And I feel like a lot of movies do that. This feels like they are aliens. Also, they make the origin important. I feel like Superman's origin is sort of like Spider-Man's, where yes, it informs some of the stuff that he does and his character, but you can skip over it. Arguably, it doesn't add anything if you already know what his origin is. But they use Kal-El's origin to sort of cement us on Krypton. We actually care about Krypton. And more specifically, we understand Zod. This isn't a Superman origin. This is a Zod origin story, a General Zod origin. And that sets him up really, really well to be the main villain of this movie. Just for simplicity's sake, they don't explicitly say it here, but Ma and Pa Kent, the farmers who find him, they adopt Kal-El and they give him the name Clark Kent. That's what I'll be referring to him as from now on until he starts being Superman. Which is a while from now. You'd be surprised. At this point, they switch a lot between flashbacks and present day, which is really disorienting. I'm going to just do the flashbacks all at once and then present day, but keep in mind, it's not this smooth. It feels weird and disjointed, but it's easier if I just tell you all the flashback stuff and then tell you the present day stuff. Basically, we get to see through Clark's childhood. We see him learning his powers. He's in class when he discovers all of his super senses, which totally understandably leads to a panic attack when your super hearing kicks in and you can hear everyone's heartbeats. Also, when X-ray vision looks like this. This is scary. I don't like this. It does come back later in a kind of cool way, but still. We skip ahead to present day, and then we skip back to a little bit later in his childhood when he saves a bus full of classmates from drowning when the bus crashes into a lake. This is not a bad scene, but it does lead to the worst scene, arguably. It's my least favorite scene in the whole movie. He's talking to Pa Kent after the bus crash. And instead of praising Clark or, just saying, good job, that's praise, but you know what I mean, for saving the lives of 6 of his classmates, he scolds him for using his powers. I'm just going to let it play.
I just wanted to help.
I know you did, but we talked about this. Right? Right? We talked about this. You have... Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Pa Kent is awful, and I hate him. He's cynical and stubborn, and everything he says has these weird religious undertones. He thinks Clark is Jesus. Like, not literally, but he sees Clark as Jesus. This whole movie has weird religious undertones. We'll talk about that a little more at the end. But he thinks that if people find out what Clark can do, it will make them question their beliefs, which, firstly, I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, I think that is a good thing. People should do that more often. But secondly, even if it isn't a good thing, it's not something to let a bus full of children die to avoid. What are you talking about? He ends up showing Clark the escape pod, which he arrived in, and explaining his origins, which I guess they were keeping a secret from him. Do I think this is a good decision on the part of the Kents? No, but does this reflect badly on the creative team? Not really. It's just a decision. It's not anywhere near the rampant mischaracterization of Pa Kent we just saw in the previous scene. Although, Clark already knew he had powers, so what were they telling him? And I also think this is just an excuse to have a big talking scene, which we'll see going forward this movie absolutely loves to do. There are a lot of big talking scenes. Pa Kent gives Clark the key with the little Superman symbol that his parents sent with him, and tells him that he has to be here for a purpose. It feels a little more like more Jesus stuff. The whole point of these flashbacks is to set up his backstory, obviously, but also to set up Clark's main objective throughout the first half of this movie. Present day Clark Kent is trying to discover any insight he can into his origins and his purpose on Earth. I can't quite tell how. He seems to just be working a bunch of jobs undercover with like fake names. We first see him on a fishing boat, and then he's in a bar, and then he's a part of an Arctic cargo team. I don't know how he gets hired or how this furthers his search for answers, but it does work somehow. All the while he's doing little acts of heroism. He's not Superman yet, but he's doing small good deeds while he's looking for answers. We are then introduced to Lois Lane, a reporter at the Daily Planet and Superman's love interest. She's actively reporting on a military operation in the Canadian tundra. Turns out they have discovered a Kryptonian ship buried in the ice. It's been there for thousands of years. We also meet Colonel Hardy and scientist Emil Hamilton. They're both very minor characters, but they sort of get arcs, and I'll talk about them later, so I thought they deserved a mention. I guess this is where Clark was trying to get this whole time, because he is here as a part of the aforementioned cargo team. I don't know how he knew to get here, since it's a military operation, and I'm assuming it's top secret, or at least sort of secret, or how any of those other jobs helped. Maybe he's just trying to fill out his resume. Anyway, he's here now, and he ends up using his heat vision to tunnel through the ice to get to the ship, which I actually think is a pretty cool use of heat vision. They do that a few times throughout this. I think Zack Snyder was a big fan of heat vision over everything else, because there's some really cool uses for it. In the ship, Clark finds a pedestal that fits that key, and when he inserts it, Jor-El appears and starts mysteriously leading him through the ship. I don't know why he's mysterious. All it does is lead Clark into another room and then they talk. He could have just done that here. Lois, who'd noticed Clark entering the cave, she follows him, but then she's attacked by a robot security guard. Clark saves her by destroying the robot, and then cauterizing her wound with heat vision, That one's a little less believable. I don't know how much he's practiced, but it feels like a little too precise of a maneuver for just lasers shooting out of your eyes. He ends up leaving her on the ice outside of the ship, and then he takes the ship and he flies away. Lois, now back in Metropolis, the major city of Superman, she tries to get her story about this alien encounter published, but her editor just doesn't believe her. So she ends up going to a blogger, like a shady online blogger, to get it posted. That's important later, but for now it just feels a little out of place. Meanwhile, Clark lands in Antarctica. The ship functions as his fortress of solitude, which is a bit of a downgrade from the like cool crystal ice castle that he normally has, but it's a nice fit into the plot and also the world. It's a bit more of a grounded world, and having him throw a crystal into the ice and create this castle is a little less realistic. Also, as with everything, it ends up coming back later on. It's important that it's a ship, but we'll talk about that later. He meets Jor-El's consciousness, which it wasn't Jor-El on the ship. Obviously, Jor-El is dead. But he has embedded his consciousness into this key, and now he's a hologram. The scene is only 4 minutes, but it feels so much longer. Jor-El basically just talks to him, talks at the audience. For the next 4 minutes, it's all just information, so I'm just going to go over that information. Forgive me if I look at my script, because it's a lot. A long time ago, Kryptonians used to send ships to other planets along with a device called a world engine, which allowed them to terraform those planets and expand their colonies. This ship is one of those. The one on Earth is one of those ships. However, these efforts stopped when they ran out of natural resources. We already know that this led to the collapse of the planet's core and subsequent destruction of Krypton, as well as General Zod's coup. That's one of the other things. They keep explaining things to other characters that we already know instead of just going like, I'll explain it to you and then cut. So they spend like 2 minutes explaining the thing we saw. Krypton also introduced artificial population control, preventing natural births and growing children with predetermined roles in a thing called a Genesis chamber. This is why Kal-El was the first natural birth in hundreds of years. And it's sort of important. They specifically chose for him to be the first natural birth because everyone has their roles in Krypton society, and Jor-El wanted Kal-El to be greater, something greater. He could be whatever he chose to be. Jor-El's plan was for Clark to grow up on Earth, and then to represent the best of both worlds and prevent humans from making the same mistakes as the Kryptonians by giving them hope. Jor-El explains that that is what the symbol means, the S. It means hope. He explains why he has all his powers. Earth's climate is less harsh than Krypton's, and its sun is younger. It's a yellow sun versus the red sun. Superman gets his suit. I have mixed feelings about the suit. On one hand, I like the S, and it's got like a long flowing cape. I'm not sold on the scales, but it is Kryptonian, and I like how alien Krypton was. It fits with the vibe. My two biggest problems, though, I prefer when his human parents have a hand in making his suit, but again, this makes sense, as Jor-El is like much more a driving force for his heroism than Ma or Pa Kent is in this. And then my other big issue, and this is my major issue, is it's just so colorless. It just blends in with everything around him. I don't know. At least it's not black and white.
They wanted me back for a reason. I need to find out why.
After he gets his suit, we finally see him fly. This is actually him learning to fly. He's mostly doing big jumps at the start, which is basically how he originally was doing stuff in the comics. He couldn't fly in the comics originally. The music is great in this scene. They did a great job recapturing something here with like new music. I will say that the flying, it feels like it embodies power more than speed or freedom. I just don't love the vibe of this flying. The movie has a whole shaky cam thing a lot of the time, and that doesn't really lend itself to the flying scenes. I could see how it would work, but it just doesn't work for me. After the flight scene, we are immediately put back on the ground when we start following Lois Lane again. She's looking for Clark after her alien encounter. She wants to interview him. She basically goes to every place that he worked while undercover, and then she ends up finding Ma Kent. She meets up with Clark in a graveyard, and he asks her not to pursue the story. He doesn't want an interview. He doesn't want her to. He honestly wants her to drop the thing she's already put out there. Turns out Pa Kent is dead, and we get the absolute pleasure of watching that through another flashback. A not so young anymore Clark Kent. It's just Henry Cavill, but they've done something to him. He doesn't even look younger. He just looks wrong. He wants to use his powers for good. Pa Kent is having none of it. He thinks that Clark does enough good on the farm. Of course he does. I hate Pa Kent. And of course the world isn't ready for his powers. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a tornado, and everyone runs to safety. Just as everyone is making it to safe location, though, they realize that Ma Kent left their dog in the car. Not Crypto. He is in this movie, sort of. Crypto was featured heavily in the 2025 Superman movie. Zack Snyder made a statement after everyone was like, where was Crypto in Man of Steel? Saying he actually was in it, and then people found him. He's a headstone. He's a regular Earth dog that Pa Kent put down to show Clark the true, like, the meaning of life, the significance of life. So it's just awful on every level. First of all, Pa Kent killed a dog. Let's just establish that. I hate Pa Kent. Let's make that a hashtag. He sucks. But we need to specify Man of Steel Pa Kent, because usually he's great. But also, that's just not Crypto. That's an Earth dog. That's a different dog. Anyways, that's not the point. Not Crypto, a completely original dog, Hank, was left in the car with the tornado. The tornado isn't in... You get what I'm saying. Instead of Clark going after the dog, he tries, but Pa Kent tells him no, and he goes after Hank himself. He saves the dog, but he breaks his ankle in the process, and he can't escape the tornado. And we get quite possibly the funniest on-screen death of all time. I'll let you watch. The only thing that could have made that scene better is getting to see him flung around by the tornado. I don't know if you can tell who my least favorite character is. Here's my problem. Pa Kent would have been able to get there and back if he hadn't broken his ankle. And Pa Kent is a regular human being. He's an awful human being, but physically he's a regular human being. Clark could have done that. He wouldn't have had to fly in or use heat vision or anything. He would have just ran in the same way Pa Kent did, got the dog, and got out. And he wouldn't have broken his ankle, because he can't. What was Pa Kent thinking here? I should be moving on, but I just want to compare this to how Pa Kent often dies in comics and movies and media. Usually, Pa Kent will die due to disease or a heart attack, which is cool. Not cool, it's awful, but it presents a new challenge for Superman. It's something that he couldn't have stopped. He can't save his dad, and it provides this sense of powerlessness, and it works really well. I won't claim it's always done in the best way. The original Superman comics, while having Pa Kent die to disease, does it in a really strange way. In Superman number 161, the Kents go on vacation and they dig up a buried treasure chest. It turns out that inside this chest is this ancient plague, which leads to both of his parents dying. Crazy. I'm not necessarily saying there's a right way to kill off Pa Kent. I'm just not a fan of how they do it in this movie, especially because the only real impact it has on Clark is a sort of sunk cost fallacy thing. He says it himself after the flashback ends.
I let my father die because I trusted him. Because he was convinced that I had to wait. That the world was not ready.
It's just an excuse to have him not use his powers still, even though Pa Kent is out of the picture. Okay, back to the movie. He convinces Lois to drop the story, which she does, and then Clark goes back to the Kent farm to tell Ma Kent all about Jor-El's exposition a few scenes ago. Okay, this is where the movie really picks up. A Kryptonian ship arrives above Earth, and General Zod, having escaped the Phantom Zone when Krypton was destroyed, he sends this broadcast down to Earth. He tells Clark that he has 24 hours to give himself up, or Earth will suffer the consequences.
My name is General Zod. I come from a world far from yours. I have journeyed across an ocean of stars to reach you.
Lois gets arrested by the FBI after being ratted out by the blogger as being his anonymous source. I said it picks up here, but we're gonna just screeching halt real quick. Clark is in church, and there is another flashback. This one's short though. It's set before his dad's death. Clark's getting bullied. Pa scares off the bullies, and he tells him,
You just have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark, because whoever that man is, good character or bad, he's going to change the world.
that's it. Part of me is happy that it's so short, and another part of me wonders why the movie has it at all. We're still at a halt, just, because Clark is still in church, and he just starts confessing everything to a priest, which I think is just an excuse to have the characters explain the narrative intrigue instead of, showing it and trusting the audience in any way. Clark doesn't think he can trust Zod, but he doesn't trust humanity either. The priest tells him,
Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith first. The trust part comes later.
I like that line. It is a good line. One major complaint. Why is he getting this from a random priest? The movie leans so heavily on these religious undertones and seems to have this obsession with characterizing humanity as simply weak and selfish. Maybe not ill-intentioned, but still lesser. To the point where the only people teaching Clark important lessons are Jor-El, who in this context is pretty much also a god, and this random priest. Pa Kent should be teaching him these lessons. Ma Kent should be. Instead, they're just there. Anyways, Clark, all suited up, flies to the army base where Lois is being kept. He's handcuffed and brought in to speak with her. This scene would be great if they had any chemistry whatsoever. In fact, they remind me of another black and red-haired couple.
Shoelace.
Despite this, there are still some nice moments. She asks what the S stands for, and then he tells her it's hope, but then she gets interrupted when she's about to suggest the name Superman.
On my world, it means hope.
Well, here it's an S. How about
Sir?
Hi. Superman, I'm going to start calling him that from now on, tells General Swanwick, a military general who's working there, that he can't be controlled, but he's not the enemy. Superman decides to turn himself in to Zod and basically trust humanity. They go outside, and then Feora Ul, cool name, she's one of the other Phantom Zone prisoners, arrives to escort Superman to Zod. However, she also takes Lois with them. Clark gives Lois the key from earlier. I guess I'm going to go back and forth between Superman and Clark. The artificial Kryptonian atmosphere is actually too harsh, and Clark actually collapses and loses consciousness. He wakes up in human clothes at the Kent farm, and oh my god, originally I thought we were getting another goddamn flashback, but it's just a dream sequence. It's not really any better when your dream sequence is just there so that Zod can monologue a whole explanation of his origin story and evil plans to Clark. Another exposition monologue that I will recap. Here we go. They used the Phantom Zone projector that was meant to trap them to create a hyperdrive, the same thing Jor-El did to Clark's ship as a baby. You go all across the universe scavenging the old outposts Jor-El had mentioned. They got their hands on a world engine, the device Kryptonian explorers used to terraform planets. When Clark activated the ship where he found Jor-El, it sent out a distress beacon that led Zod to Earth. Zod thinks that the Codex, the thing that holds the DNA of future generations of Kryptonians, was stored in Clark's escape pod by Jor-El and wants to use it, along with the world engine, to colonize Earth and create a new Krypton, eliminating humanity in the process. There we go. I actually think Zod is a really good part of this film. Michael Shannon, the actor who plays him, gives an incredible performance. He feels genuinely threatening at times. And a huge part of that is his motivation and it's people by any means necessary. So he doesn't just want to rule, he has a biological imperative he's desperately trying to carry out. And he's even more desperate now that this is his last chance, since Krypton's gone, but he still has the possibility of bringing them back. It's my probably my favorite adaptation of the character, and it's so frustrating that it's in this movie. He has this actual genetic like role and purpose, very specific purpose because of the artificial breeding. As a military leader, he has to protect Krypton. Zod sends down a couple of ships to Kansas in search of the Codex, while his scientist extracts blood from a temporarily powerless Superman. Lois is thrown in a cell, but fortunately, there's a place for the key that Clark gave her. So she inserts it, and Jor-El's hologram appears. He takes control of the ship and helps her escape. Changes the atmosphere back to Earth so that Superman can get his powers back. And he opens and closes doors, basically leading Lois to an escape pod. Jor-El also teaches her how to send Zod and his crew back to the Phantom Zone, but surprisingly, we don't get to see that whole conversation of exposition. Lois escapes, but her transport ship is damaged. Superman's powers are restored, and he confronts Jor-El's hologram about the Codex. Jor-El explains that they had intended him to grow up on Earth, and then eventually to use the Codex to restore Krypton, but sort of bridge the two worlds together rather than just creating a society of oppression. He tells Clark to save Lois, and then to save all of them, which is, he's sort of acting as a foil character to Pa Kent. Superman does save Lois after a very close call, which was entirely avoidable. He does a weird, like, floating off into space thing, which he could have just not done. After saving Lois, Superman flies away, and we cut to the Kent farm, where Zod and a few of his cronies have just arrived. They find the ship that Clark arrived in, but the Codex is not there. So they start interrogating Ma Kent, but Superman flies in to save her, and we get our first fight about 3/4 through the movie. Don't worry, though, they make up for it by having pretty much the entire third act be nothing but fights. Superman fights Zod. He throws him through a gas station, which, first of all, collateral damage much. It blows up. But it does destroy Zod's helmet, which opens him up to Earth's atmosphere. He's overwhelmed by this, like, these new powers, which sort of mirrors the scenes we saw in the flashback of Clark getting his powers as a kid. I said X-ray vision being really scary comes back, and it's when Zod gets overwhelmed. It works because of how scary X-ray vision is. He fights Feora and Big Guy. I never looked up his name. I'm just going to call him Big Guy. You'll know who I'm talking. He's big. Anyways, he fights them in Smallville, the little Kansas town. The military get involved too, but obviously they aren't any help. They actually start shooting at Superman as well. They don't trust him yet. Big Guy just straight up crushes someone's head. Superman finally saves someone when he stops Feora from doing the same thing, but even then, he crashes them both into an IHOP, which just has people in it. That's so dangerous. He didn't have to do that. Actually, earlier he told people to
Get inside.
because it's too dangerous. And then he's just throwing them through buildings? What's going on? He gets absolutely destroyed by the other Kryptonians until the military comes back and distracts them. Finally, Superman actually saves someone, but that's immediately followed by him just standing there while Feora kills maybe 10 people. And then he goes after Big Guy instead, who isn't doing anything. Colonel Hardy, from earlier, tries to fight Pharaoh with a knife. I don't know why, but Superman saves him. The military takes her down with a rocket, and the Kryptonians retreat, because it breaks her mask in the same way that it breaks Zod's. Colonel Hardy trusts him now, and I guess so do the soldiers, because they just let him go. Clark goes back home to the wreckage of the farm to talk to Ma when Lois shows up to explain Jor-El's plan. Zod's scientist discovers that the Codex is actually stored in Clark's blood, remember? And Zod gives the order to release the world engine. It lands in the South Indian Ocean while Zod's ship descends over Metropolis. Zod begins the terraforming of Earth, slowly destroying Metropolis. The plan is to launch Clark's escape pod into Zod's ship, causing the Phantom Drives to collide, creating a singularity and sending Zod and his soldiers back to the Phantom Realm. Zone? I wrote realm. No one calls it the Phantom Realm. While the military does that, Superman will stop the world engine. Zod takes over the Fortress of Solitude so that he has access to the Genesis chamber inside and can grow Kryptonians with the DNA from the Codex. He immediately masters his powers somehow. I guess just some of them. Like, he doesn't use X-ray vision anymore. The defense mechanisms of the world engine make it function sort of like a big monster. And I always appreciate Superman fighting a big monster. Plus the fact that it's making the space around it more like Krypton makes Superman weak, and I think that's pretty clever. One of the movie's other problems, though, is that it feels like it forgets that anyone exists when they aren't on screen. We see this a lot in moments when we know through context that Superman is technically right next to a fight but doesn't get involved. There's a really abhorrent example here when the Daily Planet staff only start evacuating when we as an audience return to them, which is quite a while after all of Metropolis starts being decimated. Zod destroys Jor-El's consciousness and pilots the fortress towards Metropolis. We flash back and forth between Metropolis and Superman's fight with the world engine, watching the members of the Daily Planet come to terms with their deaths, basically, before Superman is finally able to destroy the terraforming device and save their lives. Just as the military prepares to drop the ship with the Phantom Drive, Zod ambushes them, almost destroying their ship before Superman stops him. Superman destroys the fortress along with the Genesis chamber and any hope of Krypton's resurrection, which I think is great. Having him choose to basically straight up abandon Krypton for Earth in this moment, it is a good decision. Hamilton and Hardy, the minor characters from earlier, sacrifice themselves to make sure the Phantom Drives collide, sending Zod's ship back to the Phantom Zone. I told you they'd come back. I guess it's not an arc, they just die, but still. Superman saves Lois one last time, and they share a completely chemistry-less kiss. And then they do a quip?
You know, they say it's all downhill after the first kiss.
I'm pretty sure that only counts when you're kissing a human.
This feels very out of place. I don't understand this script at all. Zod survives. He wasn't on the ship. He was with the Genesis chamber. But he's without purpose because his whole identity was centered around saving Krypton, and now that last chance is gone. So he's just angry. And this is a great villain arc. It's rare that you see a movie understand that villains have to go through change as well. It would be awesome if the movie ended here, setting him up for a sequel. But it doesn't. Instead, they fight again. This time Zod's using his newfound powers. He's using heat vision and he's jumping about. I'm shocked at just how many people are still in Metropolis. The destruction has been going on for a while, but everyone's still there. I guess it's realistic, but I don't like it. And Superman just doesn't care. If he cared, if he was helping people, but he isn't. He's just throwing Zod around. He actually like jumps over an explosive truck instead of stopping it, and there could totally be people in the building that he just blew up. There's another good use of heat vision when Zod's like trying to hit him with an I-beam, and he melts it before it can hit him. We get another joke. It's out of place, but it's subtle and funny enough that I'll give it a pass. They fight for a while, throwing each other through buildings and crashing into the ground. They go into space at one point, and then they crash into a crowded train station, and this is maybe the most divisive part of the entire film. In one last effort to hurt Superman, Zod, now in a vice grip, tries to kill civilians. He starts using his heat vision, and Superman has to break his neck.
Never.
I think this moment is overhated. A lot of people say Superman doesn't kill. Technically, he doesn't have a no-kill rule. He just doesn't kill because he's a nice guy. But I do have a lot of problems with it, and that'll be in my closing statements. We immediately shift gears. The movie's not over yet. Superman and General Swanwick have a pretty light-hearted exchange, all things considered. The captain even makes a comment about how she thinks he's hot.
What are you smiling about, Captain?
Nothing, sir. I just think he's kind of hot.
Get in the car, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Again, it's just not the time. Clark and Ma Kent do a little memorial for Pa, even though he was awful and the worst and stood for all the wrong things. But we get another little flashback to Clark as a kid, and he's pretending to be a superhero with his dog. Maybe it's Crypto, maybe it's Hank, we don't know. This is cute. Finally, Clark gets a job at the Daily Planet, and we get a fun little exchange between him and Lois. For the first time, it feels like they might actually like each other, and I think that they end it on a clever double entendre.
Lane, I want you to meet our new stringer. I want you to show him the ropes. This is Clark Kent. Good luck, kid.
Hey, Steve.
Nice to meet you.
too.
Hi. Lois Lane. Welcome to the planet.
Glad to be here, Lois.
That is the end of my not so concise plot summary. There's a couple more things that I want to talk about before the end of this video, however. Firstly, just some broader critiques of the film. It looks awful. Like, it's shaky and blurry and dark and colorless. It just doesn't have a tone. And sometimes I do like the found footage element, but after a while, it's just hard to look at. I talked about the X-ray vision thing, but you know, all of the fight scenes are just shaky. The talking scenes are shaky, which is super distracting. Speaking of talking scenes, it makes a really common mistake of not trusting the audience. Anytime information needs to be conveyed, they find a way of having the characters just talk about it. I could talk about the long exposition monologues of like Jor-El and Zod, but I think the worst example of this has to be just after Zod activates the world engine. I'm just going to let this scene play in full. Keep in mind, Zod just explained his whole plan to Superman in a dream sequence like half an hour ago.
What did they hit us with?
It's like some kind of gravity weapon. It's working in tandem with their ship. Somehow they're increasing the Earth's mass, clouding the atmosphere with particulates. Oh my God. The terraforming.
What's that?
Planetary engineering modifying the Earth's atmosphere and topography.
Turning Earth into Krypton.
But what happens to us?
Based on these readings, there won't be in us.
That is bad writing. It's very clear Zack Snyder wanted this movie to be a biblical allegory. And in doing so, I think he lost what makes Superman so special. Jor-El tells Clark that he's a leader, and in a way that he's superior to humans, something for them to strive for. Clark accepts this role as idol and pretty much abandons this human identity, his life that he's had for 30 years, immediately embracing this Kryptonian heritage, which they sort of go back on when he destroys the Genesis chamber, but that's never really even talked about. Why wouldn't he? Is the other thing. Humanity in this movie is shown to have no real redeeming qualities except for their ability to be led by Superman. Ma and Pa Kent teach him nothing except to be afraid. Superman is so special because of his humanity, because of all the things he's learned growing up on Earth. He's supposed to strive to be a part of humanity, not rule or abuse it. And he's supposed to teach heroes, villains, people to do the same. We see that in Superman 2025, James Gunn's Superman. He teaches Lex how to be human, and Lex is human. This movie fails to recognize the true value of humanity, and in so doing, it also fails to recognize how important that value is to the character of Superman. It fails Superman. There's also a lot of narrative elements that I see as flawed that could actually be really good if they were properly reflected on. Pa Kent being one of them. He is a terrible role model, but the movie just goes along with the fact that, oh no, he's great. He teaches Clark lessons. If we talked about Pa Kent being a bad role model, then that would be great. In the new Superman movie, we have one of his father figures evil, Jor-El in that case, and one of his father figures as good, Pa Kent. If you did the same thing here with Jor-El being good and Pa Kent being evil, now, I still think it teaches the wrong lesson with the whole lack of faith of humanity thing, but at least it would reflect on what you're actually showing the audience rather than showing us something and just saying, don't think about it. Another thing is Superman's choice when it comes to the world engine versus Metropolis. It's not really a choice. He just goes and fights the world engine. But in Superman 25, I'm sorry that I'm making all of these comparisons. I just really like this movie, and it's got a lot of parallels. But he has to choose to either stop Lex's device that is going to destroy the world, that's the world engine equivalent, or go to Jarhanpur and save people. And he makes the same choice this Superman does. He goes and he saves the world, but at least it is a choice instead of just a given. Arguably, my biggest problem with this movie is that Superman doesn't save people. This is maybe the least compassionate version of Superman we've ever seen. He has like none of the great power, great responsibility stuff Superman and most superheroes, but especially Superman, usually have. I personally blame Pa Kent because he's an awful role model and a bad person, and I hate him. But Superman, he ignores the deaths of those around him to focus on fighting the bad guys. He's always throwing people through crowded buildings and fighting people in populated areas. If you can move that fast, you don't have to fight in the only town in like 100 miles. The only time he actually does save a bunch of people, he's on the other side of the planet. So it just doesn't feel right. We flash back and forth to like remind the audience that technically he's saving the world, but it doesn't feel like he cares. It's again just stopping the bad guys. This really hurts the whole film, but especially the ending, because you're telling me we're supposed to believe after all of this, suddenly he cares enough about 4 random people to kill Zod? It just doesn't work. I talked a little bit about Zod earlier, about how much I love him. He's just set up so well from the beginning. Shannon's performance is fantastic. His motivations are just perfect. This movie seems to understand that it's not just the hero who deserves an arc. Destruction of the Genesis Chamber, leaving Zod is like nothing but a husk of his former self with no purpose, is great. I love it. Perfect setup for a sequel, which is why I'm so upset that they killed him off in the last 15 minutes of the movie. At least if there were consequences for Superman killing Zod, it would feel like it meant something. But the next scene, he just goes back to being this stone-faced god. He doesn't care, or it doesn't look like he cares, or the audience doesn't see that he cares. And even if there were consequences, I think it's far too early to be exploring that kind of guilt when technically Clark has only been Superman for a few days, and this is only the first movie. Speaking of the first movie, what does the future of Zack Snyder's Superman franchise look like? Well, technically, this is the only Superman movie we ever got. DC did expand into a wider cinematic universe. I talked about that earlier, the DCEU. And Zack Snyder did return for a few more projects. We got a Batman vs. Superman movie, which will probably be my next video. And he appeared in Justice League, as well as a couple of other cameos, but we didn't really get another Superman solo movie until the DCU was officially pronounced dead, and James Gunn took over with the DCU. He dropped the extended for some reason. I think it's a good idea. It does seem a little closer to Marvel, though. Most of the DCEU movies are pretty bad, so I'll probably be making a few more videos on those over the coming months. Maybe even a short video just going over the whole timeline, because it does get pretty confusing. I'd just like to go over some closing thoughts before I end the video. Man of Steel from 2013 is not a bad movie, necessarily. However, it's a very bad Superman movie. It completely misrepresents the character in favor of heavy religious subtext and a dark and grounded atmosphere. It's not without merit, some great CGI, a wonderful soundtrack, and some pretty brilliant world building, but it fails Superman. It is the beginning of the end for not just Superman, but arguably all of DC. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you.